The entire story of Paige Swanson is a lot messier than most people remember, and that's mostly because most people only remember the first half of it. They remember the girl who showed up to beat Sheldon at his own game. They remember she got kind of mean later, and then they stop there. So to help you actually understand her, I'm going to walk through every key moment that shaped who she became, in order, starting with the first time she walks into a college physics class at 10 years old, and ending with the very last time this show ever puts her on screen. 9 episodes, 5 seasons, and somewhere in the middle of all that, a kid who had more going for her than Sheldon did ends up somewhere nobody watching season 2 would have called. The reason her story feels so unfinished has everything to do with where it stops, and that part only lands if you've got the whole thing lined up first. So let's start back when she was just the new kid. Paige does not show up on this show as a classmate. She shows up as a threat, and the show knows exactly what it's doing. Because up until she walks in, Sheldon's whole deal is that he's the one. He's the smartest kid in every room he's ever been in, and every adult in his life has spent years confirming that for him. It's not just something he's good at, it's the thing he believes he is. So when the writers decide to shake that up, they don't hand him a bully or a bad grade or a teacher who hates him. They hand him another 10-year-old who's just as far ahead as he is. And there's something about her introduction that trips almost everybody up. The episode isn't really built around her. It's built around what she does to Sheldon. Which means the first impression most fans hang on to is basically Sheldon's opinion of Paige, filtered through a kid who's actively melting down about not being unique anymore. That's a huge part of why people remember her wrong. You can watch it happening in her very first scene, and once you know to look for it, you can't unsee it. In Season 2, Episode 2, A Rival Prodigy and Sir Isaac Neutron, Paige walks in as another 10-year-old auditing Dr. Sturgis's college physics class. Not a kid who's been bumped up a couple grades. A 10-year-old sitting in a college lecture, same as Sheldon, doing the same work. And Sturgis takes an interest in her, which is the part that really gets under Sheldon's skin, because Sturgis is supposed to be his guy. Her performance in that class is strong enough that Sheldon can't just wave it off as luck or as a fluke. Then, Mary invites the entire Swanson family over to the house, and that's where things get uncomfortable in a much more specific way. Paige and Sheldon spend the visit going back and forth about what they've each already pulled off, and it turns into 2 kids reading each other their own resumes at a dinner table. The detail from that scene that says the most about who Paige is doesn't have anything to do with science, though. She does the bookkeeping for her dad's dental practice, and she expects to get paid actual money for it. Sheldon, meanwhile, is running on a reward system with his parents. Little prizes, little privileges, gold stars from mom and dad. And Paige is out here doing skilled work for a business and expecting a check. That's not a smarter versus dumber thing. That's a kid who already understands that her ability is worth something in the real world, sitting across from a kid who still thinks of his ability as something you trade to your parents for treats. Nobody in the episode says that out loud. It's just sitting there in the writing. There's also a whole second conversation happening in that house while the 2 prodigies are busy comparing themselves. Erica, Paige's older sister, ends up connecting with Georgie and Missy, and what they've got in common is that all 3 of them live in the shadow of a genius sibling. The adults figure out something similar over the course of that visit, which is that the pressure around raising a gifted kid has already done a number on both families. Neither set of parents thought they were the only ones drowning. And then there's the moment that actually matters most in her entire introduction, which is a moment Paige isn't even in. Sheldon has no idea what he's feeling. He genuinely can't identify it. It takes Meemaw sitting him down and putting a word on it for him, and the word is jealousy. Now, the show and the fandom both like to frame Paige as Sheldon's equal or better, and in specific scenes, she absolutely comes off that way. But that's a framing, not a scoreboard, and it's not really what her introduction is about. What her introduction is about is that Sheldon needed his grandmother to explain his own feelings back to him, while Paige walked into a house full of strangers, held her own with all of them, and went home. That gap doesn't close. It gets wider, and everything else in her story grows out of it. But being better at physics isn't the thing that actually separates Paige from Sheldon. There's something else she can do that he flat out cannot, and the show spends her next 2 appearances proving it. The real contrast this show builds between these two kids has nothing to do with test scores. It's that Paige can be a normal kid and a college student in the same week, and Sheldon can only ever manage one of those at a time. And the show plays this for laughs, mostly. It's funny. It's supposed to be funny. But while everybody's laughing at Sheldon being bad at sleepovers, the writers are quietly planting something in the background of these same episodes that almost nobody catches the first time through. And that thing is the reason her whole story goes where it goes. In Season 2, Episode 10, A Stunted Childhood and a Can of Fancy Mixed Nuts Paige goes to the mall with Missy and Sheldon. And then she stays over at the Cooper house. And she is completely fine. She and Missy play with dolls. They pull Georgie into a prank. There's a scary story going around at some point. Paige is right in the middle of all of it having a great time. And Sheldon spends the entire night looking like somebody dropped him on an alien planet. She also drops, casually, that she's already covered material Sheldon is currently working through. Which is the show reminding you that the girl playing with dolls at a sleepover is not slumming it. She's not choosing kid stuff because she can't hack the hard stuff. She's doing both at the same time, and she doesn't seem to think that's remarkable. Earlier that same season, at the Carbon Dating Lecture, you get a smaller version of the same idea. Paige is there, Sheldon's there, and the two of them get bored out of their minds listening to an adult talk. So they wander off into a closed section of the museum and get caught. Two prodigies who could probably teach the lecture, sneaking into a roped-off area, because sitting still is boring. Paige is the one who can flip between those two modes without any effort at all, and that flexibility is the whole point of her early episodes. Which brings me to the thing sitting in the background of that museum episode. While the kids are off getting in trouble, Barry and Linda each pull George aside separately. And they talk to him about the problems in their marriage, and about how much raising Paige is taking out of them. Two parents of a gifted kid telling another parent of a gifted kid that they are not okay. It plays like a throwaway adult scene in an episode that's mostly about a stuffed raccoon. It is not a throwaway. That is the show loading the gun. Everything that happens to Paige from here forward traces directly back to that hallway conversation, and the reason it's easy to miss is that the episode buries it under jokes and then moves on like nothing happened. And the sleepover episode has its own version of a hidden landmine, because there's a whole conversation in it about what happens to a kid who misses out on being a kid. The idea gets floated that a childhood you never got to have turns you into a maladjusted adult, and that lands hard enough on Sheldon that he starts trying to act more childish on purpose. Adult Sheldon's narration in that episode is pointed at his own future, and the show clearly means it as a warning about him. But look at who's delivering that warning. Paige is the one raising the idea that a stunted childhood wrecks you later. Paige, the kid in that room who's doing childhood correctly. She's not warning about herself. She has no reason to. She's got the dolls and the college class, and the sister, and the two parents, and the job at her dad's office. She is, by every measure this episode gives you, the one who figured it out. So Season 2 leaves you with a kid who has every single thing Sheldon doesn't have, which is exactly what makes her next appearance so rough, because when she comes back, almost none of it is still there.
There's a note.
There's one episode where this show stops using Paige as a comparison for Sheldon and starts using her as a warning. And it turns so fast that a lot of viewers just file the whole thing under Paige got mean in Season 3. That reading isn't crazy because she does something genuinely nasty in this episode. But what she does makes a completely different kind of sense once you know why she's at the Cooper house in the first place. And the show tells you that in the first couple minutes. In Season 3, Episode 12, Body Glitter and a mall safety kit Linda and Barry have separated. And Linda arranges for Paige to spend the weekend with the Coopers because Paige is having a hard time with the divorce and could use a friend. That's the setup. A mom who can see her kid slipping, reaching out to another family, and hoping a few days somewhere else does something. And Paige looks different. Her hair has changed. Her whole presentation has changed. Her grades are down and her interests aren't what they were. And it's Linda who spells out that both her school performance and her behavior have slid since the split. The kid from the sleepover, the one who could juggle college physics and doll games without breaking a sweat, has dropped one of those and is losing her grip on the other. Then the mall. Paige steals body glitter, and she doesn't just steal it, she plants it in Sheldon's backpack. That's the moment a chunk of the fandom decides they're done with her, and honestly, it's a rotten thing to do. She's setting up the one kid in that group who would never in a million years see it coming. But then she breaks, and what pours out of her is a list, and the list is what this entire section of her story is built on. She's living between two houses. Her dad's behavior is a problem, her mom is dating, her grandmother is running Barry down in front of her. Erica is crying. And then the part that matters more than any of the rest of it for everything that comes later. She has stopped caring about her grades. Not slipped, stopped. She also says out loud that she'd rather just be a regular kid than a genius, which, if you go back to season 2, is the most upsetting line in her whole arc, because being a regular kid was the thing she was already better at than Sheldon. That was her advantage. And now, the only version of normal she can picture is one where she gives up the smart part entirely, like the two things can't sit in the same person anymore. Sheldon has absolutely no idea what to do with a crying girl on his couch. So he does something he almost never does, which is ask for help. He calls Dr. Sturgis, and Sturgis tells him the job here isn't to fix her problem or solve anything or explain anything. The job is to sit there and listen patiently. And Sheldon actually does it. He listens. Then he makes her tea. That tea is a bigger deal than it looks. The show treats that moment as the origin of the hot beverage thing. The habit of handing an upset person a warm drink that follows Sheldon around for the rest of his life. And adult Sheldon's narration in this episode reaches all the way forward into his own marriage, tying this one night on the couch to a family moment decades later. So, sit with what that actually means. The single time Sheldon fully shows up for Paige, no competing, no correcting, just sitting there, it permanently rewires him. It becomes part of his personality. It sticks to him for life. And it does not fix one single thing for her. The weekend ends, and she goes back to two houses and a mom who's dating and a sister who's crying. And the only thing that changed is that a 10-year-old boy learned how to make tea. Every bad decision she makes from here on is being made by a kid who already told the adults exactly what was wrong out loud, in detail, and then watched nothing happen. That's the moment the show hands her a way out, and she doesn't take it. What she takes instead is anger. And the next time we see her, she's not aiming it at her parents anymore. She's aiming it at the one person who ever sat still and listened to her. Season 4 gives Paige two appearances that seem like they've got nothing to do with each other. One of them ends with her punching Sheldon in the face. The other one ends with her drawing on him. On paper, that's a fight episode and a joke episode, and most people talk about them completely separately. Put them side by side though, and they're telling you the exact same thing about who she's become, and it's not the thing you'd expect from a kid who used to hand out her own resume at dinner parties. In episode 4, Bible Camp and A Chariot of Love, Mary and Linda decide together to sign Sheldon and Paige up for vacation Bible school. Two moms who have watched these kids butt heads for 2 seasons, going ahead and locking them in a room together for a week. And Sheldon does the thing you'd bet money on him doing, which is trying to turn Bible school into another competition. It doesn't work. Not because Paige loses, because she doesn't care. The whole engine that drove their relationship, the two of them trying to out-genius each other, is just dead on her end, and Sheldon keeps pulling the cord on a machine that isn't going to start.
Yeah, she doesn't care about that.
Maybe she just wanted that bookmark.
So he goes looking for something that will get a reaction, and he finds it because Paige has developed an interest in the religious material, and Sheldon connects that interest to what she's actually hoping for, which is that her parents get back together. He says it out loud to her face. And she punches him. Now, that punch gets used as evidence against her all the time. She hit a smaller kid, end of story. But look at what actually just happened in that scene. Sheldon didn't figure out a clever debate point. He identified the single most fragile thing in a kid's life, said it out loud in front of her, and did it because he wanted to win an argument at Bible camp. She's not swinging because she lost. She's swinging because the thing she's been quietly praying about just got read back to her like a math error. Later that same season, in A Second Prodigy and the Hottest Tips for Pouty Lips, you get the other half of the picture.
And then a magazine that included the hottest tips for pouty lips.
Georgie?
What?
President Hagemeyer puts Sheldon on recruitment duty and tells him to help sell Paige on East Texas Tech. So the school is now using one prodigy as bait for another one, which tells you plenty about how adults in this show see both of these kids. Paige is not impressed with the place, at all, and she makes it clear that she's only walking around this campus for her mother's sake, because what she actually wants is somewhere far away and elite, somewhere like Columbia or Harvard. The tour isn't a decision for her, it's a chore she's doing for Linda. Then Sheldon gets strange about it. He gets invested in her plans in a way that doesn't look like rivalry, and Missy is the one who floats the theory that he's got a crush, walking him through a magazine quiz to prove it. Sheldon being Sheldon, he doesn't just take her word for it. He goes and gets second opinions, first from Georgie and then from Dr. Sturgis. And once that's the going assumption in his house, Paige finds out about it and plays along with it. She acts like the feeling's mutual, gets him to close his eyes, and draws a mustache on him. That crush question is still one of the biggest arguments in the fandom, and it's worth being straight about what the episode does and doesn't say. It never confirms anything. What it confirms is that the people around Sheldon read his behavior that way.
I don't know, but I know that I don't want to.
Well, you don't get to choose. It's just something you feel.
And that the entire setup pays off as a prank instead of as a romance. Some fans treat her as his first crush anyway, or just prefer the idea of them together. Plenty of others read the whole thing as a bit and see their relationship as never having been romantic at all. The episode leaves the door open on purpose and never walks through it. What's more useful is what these two episodes together tell you about Paige. She's stopped competing. She stopped performing for adults, and she stopped pretending the things they want for her are things she wants. And the one skill she's still using at full strength is knowing precisely where a person's soft spot is. On Sheldon, that comes out as a mustache and a fake crush. On the receiving end, when he does it back to her about her parents, it comes out as a fist. Same skill. She just got better at aiming it than he ever did. By the end of season 4, she's still headed somewhere, at least on paper. She's got a school in mind, a mother pushing her, and every bit of the ability she started with, which is what makes the next time we see her the hardest turn in her entire story, because she isn't headed anywhere anymore, and the kid she's spent 4 seasons measuring herself against has quietly gone past her. Somewhere between season 4 and season 5, the comparison this show built these two characters on completely reverses itself, and it happens off screen. Sheldon, the kid who couldn't survive a sleepover with dolls in it, ends up with an actual life. Paige, the kid who could do college physics and childhood in the same afternoon, ends up hiding in his dorm room.
I'm completely alone, and the one person I thought would understand is having the time of his life.
And the reason she ends up in there is worse than her just being unhappy with her school, because what breaks her in this episode isn't anything about herself. Then in season 5, episode 17, a solo peanut, a social butterfly, and the truth Paige shows up at East Texas Tech the legitimate way first. She was part of her mentor's quantum gravity team from the University of Texas, chaperone and all. She's there for a lecture. On paper, she's exactly where a kid like her is supposed to be, doing exactly what a kid like her is supposed to be doing. Then she comes back. And this time, nobody knows she's there except Sheldon, because she tells him she isn't going back to Austin. She's dropping out, and she needs a place to stay for a few days while she works out how to tell her mother. Not transferring, not taking a break. Done. And a kid hating her school is a story a lot of people can relate to. Happens constantly. But there's a specific thing in this episode that gets to her worse than any of that. And it isn't about her grades or her classes or her professors. It's Sheldon's friends. Because he has them now. He's got an actual group built around role-playing games, a whole set of people who expect him to show up and are glad when he does. The kid who needed his grandmother to explain the word jealousy to him, the kid who stood in the corner at a sleepover like a coat rack, has found his people. And Paige has found nothing. She's got a school she's quitting and a dorm room she isn't supposed to be in and a bag she brought with her. She asks Sheldon to keep the adults out of it. Then she leaves a note and disappears. And what follows is Mary and the rest of them scrambling to figure out where a teenage girl went, which is exactly as ugly a night as it sounds.
Where is she?
Adult Sheldon's narration confirms she eventually made it to her mother's house, so she was okay. But that narration also ties the fear of that specific night to his own experience later on as a father. Which means this is the second time Paige's story gets permanently welded onto adult Sheldon's emotional wiring. First the tea. Now this, she keeps changing him. He never manages to change anything for her. And now, look at what the show has quietly done with these 2 over 5 seasons. Sheldon kept his family under one roof. He kept his routine, kept his mentors, kept the adults who were paying attention to him. And on top of all that, he found a group of friends. Paige lost her family structure, lost the academic identity that had been built around her since she was a little kid, lost her interest in the thing she was best at, and found nobody at all. Fans on rewatch point straight at this flip, and they're right to, because back in season 2, Paige was obviously the better adjusted one. That wasn't up for debate. She was the kid who could do both. Now, she's the one sleeping in someone else's dorm because she can't stand being in her own life, and the socially hopeless one is the one with plans on the weekend. Same 2 kids. Same starting abilities. The only real difference is which support stayed standing underneath them. And Paige's all came down in the same 2-year stretch. There's a version of this story where the dorm room is the bottom and she climbs back out. Some fans read it that way, or want to. Rewatchers have also gone back and reread her earliest confidence. All that swagger in season 2. As a kid who was already under more pressure than anybody around, her noticed. Not a happy kid who broke, a kid who was already carrying something. So she runs, she gets home, and the adults get her back, and you'd think that's the floor. It isn't. There are 2 episodes left in her entire story, and both of them are about a kid trying hard to be older than she is. One of them ends with a stranger walking away from her. The other one ends with police lights. Paige's last 2 appearances take everything this show has set up over 5 seasons and cash all of it in at once. And the strange thing about the second one, the actual final appearance, is that it isn't even a Sheldon episode. Her story doesn't end as part of his. It ends as part of Missy's, which tells you how far this character traveled from the girl who was invented purely to make Sheldon feel threatened. In season 6, episode 13, a frat party, a sleepover, and the mother of all blisters. She turns up having dropped out of college for real, and the first thing she does with her freedom is take Sheldon to a fraternity party.
I'm going to have to mother of all blisters.
I'm worried about you.
Thank you.
She drinks there, underage, and she leaves the party with an older student after telling him she's 18. That's the part worth sitting with, because she isn't just at an adult party, she's actively selling a version of herself that doesn't exist. And the whole thing falls apart because Sheldon starts asking the guy whether he knows how old she really is, and keeps pushing him lower and lower until the number comes out. The guy leaves, which, credit where it's due, is the correct thing for him to do. And it's also the most brutal possible way for her night to end. She spent the whole evening performing as an adult, and it took her nerdy little friend about 30 seconds of honest math to dismantle it. Then she falls apart. And here's who's there for it. Not Sheldon, who's standing right there and has known her for 4 years. It's Missy, who sits with her by the fountain. The 3 of them end up spending the night in Sheldon's dorm afterward, but the person Paige actually cried in front of was the girl she played dolls with back in season 2. Not the fellow genius, the friend. Which sets up how her story actually ends. Season 6, episode 16, a stolen truck and going on the...
Wanna come?
You're running away? This sounds dangerous.
Oh, well, my dad helped me.
lamb. Missy takes George's truck, and the 2 of them skip out on a diner bill, sleep in the truck overnight, and aim the whole thing at Florida. Police stop them in Louisiana, so 2 teenage girls in a stolen vehicle in another state, which is a genuinely serious situation. And while they're pulled over on the side of the road, Paige explains the science behind how police radar works. That radar moment is the one fans keep circling back to, and they're right to, because it's the show's final word on her. She quit school. She did not stop being brilliant. Nothing about her mind broke down at any point in this entire arc. What she stopped doing was participating in the plan adults picked out for her when she was too young to have an opinion about it. The intelligence is still sitting right there, fully intact, going to waste on the shoulder of a Louisiana highway. Mary calls Linda. The adults drive out and collect them. And in the middle of all that, Linda pushes back on the idea that her divorce has anything to do with how her daughter has turned out, which is its own quiet tragedy, considering Paige laid the entire thing out in detail on the Cooper's couch 3 seasons earlier, and named the divorce first.
Paige's issues have nothing to do with our divorce. Sure.
Mary bans Missy from seeing Paige. Missy immediately says the trip was her idea, not Paige's, which is the last thing anybody does for this character on screen. Her best friend standing up and taking the blame off her. And then the credits roll, and that's it. That's the end. No season 7 appearance, no adult job, no city, no relationship, no recovery, no relapse, no reunion. The show never tells you if Mary's band stuck, or if Missy ever saw her again, or if she went back to school, or if she was fine. She isn't in the Big Bang Theory either, and adult Sheldon never says her name once across all those years. And the reason for that is almost worse than a plot hole, because it's just timing. Paige showed up right as the Big Bang Theory was heading into its final season, so by the time this show had built her into somebody who mattered, the other one was already over. Steve Holland, one of the people running the show, explained it about as plainly as you can. Once the Big Bang Theory had ended, there was no going back to fit her into it. The episodes were already made, so the girl who beat him at physics, who taught him how to sit still and listen to someone cry, who is the reason he hands people warm drinks for the rest of his life, exists absolutely nowhere in the rest of that life. And the fan base has been split down the middle on her ever since. Half of them look at the theft and the drinking and the lying and the endangering people and call that reason enough to dislike her. The other half point out that she was a minor for every single one of those things, surrounded by college students and adults who should have known better, and that she told everyone exactly what was wrong back in season 3, and got tea and a ride home. There's a discussion asking what even happened to her after the divorce that pulled well over 1,000 votes, which is a lot of people still asking a question this show decided not to answer. And both sides of that argument are still arguing about a kid whose very last recorded moment is being handed straight back to the house she ran away from. If you like this one, there's a breakdown of the entire Young Sheldon timeline explained. Check it out.